If Tony and you felt uncomfortable, why would Tony pull her gun out?
She didn't pull her gun out. She set it on the table.
If you and her felt uncomfortable, why would she sit a gun on the table?
Why wouldn't she? She's going through her purse. She didn't think you were going to grab her gun and kill her.
Okay, can we just stop talking about what somebody else thinks? Because nobody knows what she was thinking.
Well, I mean, that answers his question.
Sir.
I don't want to talk to him anymore. He murdered her. He murdered my girl.
Stop.
I don't want to keep talking to him.
Mr. Fielders, in case you're unsure of who's in control of
I
this
get it.
courtroom,
I get it.
It's not you.
Well, I get it.
It's me.
I get it.
And so when I tell you to stop talking, you stop talking till a question is answered. And if you don't want to answer any more questions, your whole testimony will be stricken from the record, and I will not consider it while I'm deliberating. Ask your next question, Mr. Nixon.
Child, I'm not a lawyer, and neither is this guy, but that hasn't stopped him from representing himself in a trial where he is facing multiple charges, including felonious assault and unaliving. So his name is Quinton Nixon, and although he is representing himself, he does have some assistance.
Mr. Nixon is present representing himself. Standby counsel Attorney Perry is present. Also, Ms. Easter and Mr. Villette on behalf of the state of Ohio.
It's also worth noting that Quinton Nixon has opted for a bench trial, meaning there is no jury in this case. There is only the judge, and that judge will be deciding the verdict. All right, now let's get to the basics of this case. And you're going to have to stick with me because it's a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. So the state of Ohio alleges that there is a group of people at an apartment during the early morning hours of July 25th, 2022. Some of them had been over for a number of days. Some of them knew each other. Some did not. They had all been over there hanging out, participating in some illegal activities, not having a lot of sleep, but overall, everything is pretty friendly. And then around 2 a.m. on July 25th, police say that something happens in that apartment that resulted in Quinton Nixon unaliving 34-year-old Tony Westover. Most of the people who are at the apartment did not actually see the incident happen because it was in the living room and everybody else were in bedrooms. But Tony's boyfriend Brian, and Quinton Nixon were all in the living room when it happened. Now, immediately following this incident, almost everyone that's in that apartment jumps off the back balcony and takes off, including Quinton Nixon. About 1 month after this incident happens, Quinton Nixon is found with a very different appearance, and he is arrested and charged for this incident. Now again, there's a lot of people in this story, but you need to remember that Tony Westover is the victim in this case, and Quinton Nixon is the defendant. So now Quinton's on trial, and he is claiming self-defense. And during the opening statements of the state, they lay out exactly what Quinton needs to prove in order to claim self-defense.
Self-defense, as the court knows, is the defendant saying, I did it. It was me. I just had a legal justification for doing it. Your Honor, self-defense is when the defendant was not at fault in creating the situation giving rise to the affray, and the defendant had reasonable grounds to believe that he was in imminent, immediate danger of death or great bodily harm. And the defendant had an honest belief, even if mistaken, that he was in imminent, immediate danger. And the defendant was in a place he had a legal right to be. All of those, as the court is aware, must be present for the affirmative defense of self-defense. The state will prove this was not self-defense, that the defendant was at fault in creating the situation, or, that may be a two-letter word, but it is very important, or the defendant did not have reasonable grounds to believe that he was in imminent, immediate danger, or the defendant did not have an honest belief, even if mistaken, that he was in imminent danger. And lastly, or the defendant was not in a place he had a legal right to be. The state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt just one of those criteria, just one, and the affirmative defense fails.
So did you get all of that? In order to prove self-defense, Quinton Nixon has to show he didn't bring on this issue that resulted in him having to defend himself. Number two, that there were reasonable grounds enough for him to believe that he was in immediate danger and could die. Number three, that he actually truly believed that he was in the immediate danger and could die. And number four, that he was in a place that he had the right to be in when this all happened. So as long as he proves that, the state says he can claim self-defense. However, they can prove that any one of those four are not true. Quinton's self-defense claim is not valid. But Quinton Nixon says he's going to prove it all.
Grand Rising, ladies and gentlemen of the court. This case is a case of facts, truth, and common sense. It is not murder if it is self-defense. It is not felonious assault if it is stand your ground. I will be able to prove without a reasonable doubt that my actions were justified in the provisions of law. There are questions that need to be answered. Such questions would be, what is a procedure when someone brandishes a weapon? What do you do? What is a procedure when someone puts a gun to your head? What do you do? And you don't have a gun. Human nature, when put in situations like that, it is either fight or flight. I'm being persecuted because I chose to fight for my life. I was legally allowed to be where I was at. I could never have started the situation or the fray if I didn't have a gun. The state claims that I was high. There's no proof of me being high.
So the state begins presenting their case, and remember I said there was a group of people at that house? People from that group are some of the first witnesses that the state calls, including Tony Westover's boyfriend, whose name is Brian. Here he goes.
I'm here to testify on behalf of Tony's murder.
Put an X where you were sitting. Can you put a circle where Tony was sitting? Can you put an X where the defendant was sitting? Okay. So you all, and that table that's knocked over, was that table in the middle of you all?
Yes.
Will you please tell the court what happened next?
Well, we talked for a while. Quinton and I were sitting there, we were getting along. We had both stepped into the kitchen for a minute. We were talking with Adam. Everything was copacetic. I don't know exactly what we were talking about, but.
Okay. You came back. You sat in a different place. Was Tony still in the same place?
Yes.
And when the defendant, where did he go when you went back in there and got on your phone?
To the same spot.
What happened at this point?
I was on my phone. Next thing I know, Tony gasps. Quinton grabbed her gun.
How did her gun get out?
All right, so she was going through her purse looking for something. I don't know exactly what she was looking for, but she had taken it out, set it on the table.
Did she take any other items out of her purse?
I'm sure she did. Like I said, I was on my phone, going through my phone, so.
While you were on a phone and Tony was taking items out of her purse looking for something, was there any arguing?
No.
Was there anything that caused you any concern between the defendant and Tony?
No. I look over. Here she's scared to death. I look over. Quinton standing here has got her gun.
Standing where?
He's standing right here.
Okay. Okay, that's where the table was. Okay. And Quinton is where the X is. And where was Tony? Okay. What happened after that?
I jump up.
Okay.
Start talking to him. I'm trying to calm him down, and he's asking me if she's the police, which I was like, no. I'm trying to calm him down, like, what are you doing, man? You're tripping. Put the gun down. I wouldn't say he was panic stricken. He wasn't panic stricken, but he was definitely. It's hard to explain. You'd have to do drugs to understand. He was convinced that she was a cop, and he was looking at us to verify that she's the police, and I'm sitting there telling him no.
What happened after that?
I could see he was thinking about it. Tony's over here. She's scared to death. Tony twitches, and he snatched her up, yanked her across, literally drug her over the table pretty much, and those just started firing the shots. She was trying to get away from him. Mm-hmm. Shots got fired. I ran over. I tried to get between him and her. At that point, him and I locked up. I bit into his face. I'm wrestling him for the gun. That might have been how the table got knocked over.
Where do you believe they were? And that door would have been closed?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Was anyone else in the living room when this happened?
No. I couldn't get the gun from him. I was trying to get out of there at this point. I started running towards the back room.
Did this happen quickly?
Yeah, it happened quickly.
Where did you go after you left?
I ran.
And why did you run?
Well, at that point in time, I had a parole warrant, and I ran because he still had the gun in there with him.
Who shot Tony Westover?
Quinton did.
Prior to him grabbing the gun when you were sitting on the couch talking on the phone, had anybody threatened the defendant with the gun?
No.
Was anyone acting aggressive towards the defendant?
No.
And again, at that time, you did not have anything against the defendant?
No.
Are you aware if Tony knew Quinton, the defendant, prior to coming over there?
She didn't.
Now, Quinton Nixon's cross-examination of Brian gets a little testy.
You stated for the court that you had met me that night.
Yes.
Prior to that night, you never met me.
Not that I told him not that I remember.
You don't have any recollection of meeting me the night before?
I don't.
Do you have any recollection of a Facebook request from me?
I do. I do remember. I do remember that. I'm pretty sure that was that night, wasn't it?
That was the night before.
All right, we're not going to have this. Ask a question. We're not having a conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Do you remember having any conversation about an app, a whisper app?
No.
You remember having any conversation about a spy app?
No.
Do you remember taking my phone at any point and looking through my phone for this spy app?
No.
At the time of this incident, Tony was your girlfriend, correct?
Absolutely.
Do you remember stating anything to the nature that she was spying on you and she might have been the informant for the police?
No.
You don't remember threatening me and telling me I wasn't going to make it home to my children that night?
Absolutely not.
Do you remember saying that sometimes people get caught up in situations and they don't know what they're in?
No.
Do you remember telling Detective Hornacek that I was talking crazy? Can you clarify what do you mean by I was talking crazy?
Some of the shit you were saying I wasn't picking up on. I didn't understand, but I was in the greatest state of mind. My life wasn't together, man. What's that got to do with anything?
Stop asking questions, sir, and no more cussing. Next question, Mr. Nixon.
Do you remember in your interview stating that I was talking crazy and you and Tony wanted to leave?
You just asked me that, and I said yes, Tony wanted to leave.
If Tony wanted to leave, why would she pull her gun out?
She was going through her purse.
If Tony and you felt uncomfortable, why would Tony pull her gun out?
She didn't pull her gun out. She set it on the table.
If you and her felt uncomfortable, why would she sit a gun on the table?
Why wouldn't she? She was going through her purse. She didn't think you were going to grab her gun and kill her.
Okay, can we just stop talking about what somebody else thinks? Because nobody knows what she was thinking.
Well, I mean,
or
that
what.
answers his
Sir,
question.
Sir.
I don't want to talk to him
Well,
anymore. He murdered my girl.
Stop
I don't want to keep talking to him.
Mr. Fielders, in case you're unsure of who's in control of
I
this
get it. I
courtroom,
get it.
It's not you.
Well, I get it.
It's me.
I get
And
it.
so when I tell you to stop talking, you stop talking till a question is answered. And if you don't want to answer any more questions, your whole testimony will be stricken from the record, and I will not consider it while I'm deliberating. Ask your next question, Mr. Nixon.
If you and Tony felt uncomfortable, why didn't you just leave?
We were getting ready to leave.
Your Honor, I would ask to play his recorded interview,
For purposes of what?
impeachment,
Impeaching what?
his whole testimony.
What did he say that was inconsistent with his statement?
Yes, today he testified that he never met me before, that she was going through her purse and she wasn't emptying it out.
I didn't say that, bro.
Okay, stop, sir. He's not asking you a question, he's talking to me. And
I'm sorry. It's hard pill to swallow.
guess what? Stop talking. So I'm not going to let you ask him those questions because he testified. If Detective Hornacek takes the stand, you can question him about statements that Mr. Fielder made.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, I got to come back with a part 2 because some of the other witnesses who were there in that house that night have also testified, and Quinton Nixon himself got on the stand on day 4. Ciao. You got to tell me in the comments, how do you think Quinton Nixon is doing? Should he have gotten a real lawyer?